Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the warm applause. My name is Bill Boyd. I represent Hillsborough 12 right here in the great town of Merrimack, the 8th largest community in the Granite State, home of the Tomahawks. And I want to welcome you all to the Christie Town Hall here at the VFW. I'm one of those undecided voters, like maybe some of you. And there is no better person to talk about the undecideds than the guest that I'm about to introduce. He has been nothing less than a principled conservative, a common sense, solution-oriented executive leader who has driven this state and made the 603 the envy of our country. There's no bigger brand ambassador for the 603 than the gentleman who I'm about to introduce. He is your governor. He is my governor. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Sununu.
All right. Hey, good to see you, man. Good to see you. All right, you guys excited? Nice to see everybody. Oh, please sit down. You're not here for me. Oh, stop it. We're here for potentially maybe the next president. That's very exciting. That's very exciting stuff. Look, I just want to take a couple seconds to first say thank you. You guys have been coming out. You've been coming out to a lot of these events. You've been following what's going on. Everyone tuned into the debate last night? That was pretty exciting. I'm obviously here to introduce Governor Christie, who crushed it. Let's just cut right to the chase. He did phenomenal. He did absolutely phenomenal. One of the messages I've been pushing out there, if you see me, I'm doing all the news and I do all the media, but the most important message is this thing is so far from over, right? And if you're here in New Hampshire, you know we are really just getting started. Most folks won't even think about who they're maybe going to start getting behind seriously until sometimes after Thanksgiving. And I make the joke, but it's really true. Thanksgiving dinner, our weird uncle will come over. Our odd cousin will have the very awkward political conversations. We'll talk about the Celtics losing 2 in a row. That's very upsetting. We'll talk about the Patriots and Mac Jones. But then we get to our fifth professional sport, which is politics. And we'll have our heated discussions. And sometime in early December, we'll really get down and start figuring out where to go. So there's a few candidates left in the race. We've winnowed it down. The field is getting winnowed down. Just like we said, gee, it should winnow back in August. How is this field going to go from 13? It's going to be a repeat of 16. No, the field is getting winnowed down. There's a few clear leaders that are rising to the top, especially in New Hampshire. And Governor Christie is absolutely crushing. I thought last night was a great performance, sir. Chris always brings something a little bit different. Brings us something a little bit new. When you go debate after debate and you're standing on that national stage, you can't just say the same thing over and over again. You got to keep the excitement. You got to bring something, and to have someone who gets folks inspired, to back it with real experience. I'm obviously pretty partial to governors. I think everybody should be. Well, you can't be partial to anything coming out of Washington. That's depressing, for God's sakes. The solutions are in the states. The solutions are in the governor's hands. They're the ones that can create opportunity. They're the ones that empower the locals. They're the ones that say, hey, what's happening down in Merrimack? Let's call Bill. Let's call the representatives. Let's call Janine. Let's find out what is really happening on the ground there. Let's talk to the parents that are in the schools. Let's talk to the businesses that are on the ground, and making that connection. And I've always said, if you're good at the retail politics, then that means that's a good sign you're going to be a good retail manager. And having a retail manager like a governor sitting in the White House is an amazing opportunity for this country. Not just living up here at 30,000 feet talking about platitudes and just policy ideas. Policy's easy. I always say that. Policy's the easy part. We all have policy ideas, right? But what is the strategy to take the policy, drive it to something operational that impacts you and your family and your kids and your business, right? That's what we have not had out of Washington, D.C. in a long time. So it's great. Now, there's no doubt, I don't even know what the numbers are, but it's safe to say Chris Christie has spent more time pounding more pavement, wearing through more soles of shoes in the 603 than anybody else, and we're very appreciative of that. He has put a lot of effort into this state. And it is noticed. It is definitely noticed. We are going to have I don't know when the date is actually. I think they're going to announce the date sometime soon. Probably towards the end of January, something like that. So that means we have a little over 2 months. And as everything starts to galvanize. So the homework is, if you like what you hear today, talk. Don't just go home and sit on, oh yeah, I think I'm going to vote for Chris in a couple months, and I'm going to sit there. No, go out and talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to that weird uncle that shows up uninvited at Thanksgiving, right? Make sure they get out and vote. Talk to the independents. I think independents are going to vote in record numbers in our primary this year. There's no doubt about that, right? And that's a great opportunity. We have 40% undeclared in the state of New Hampshire. That means a lot of them are going to come out. They're not coming out for the Democrat side. Democrats don't even know what the heck they're doing with the primary. You know, it's a complete mess thanks to Joe Biden. Great, let them sort out their mess. On the Republican side, we're galvanized. We're working hard. We're getting the message out. We're getting independents to get more active and more engaged in what's happening here. And I'm a big believer for a lot of those independents, which is most all of them, that do not want to see Donald Trump as president again. They're coming out and they're voting for anybody but Donald Trump. And I'm going to say, I'll hit what, I don't want to put Chris on the spot because we're going to bring him up here. You're really here to see him. So look, I say it all the time. I'm not anti-Trump. I'm just pro-Republican Party. That's the message that's out there. The party that moves forward. The party has the next big idea, the next generation, the next big opportunity. We're not going to try to relive and relitigate the past because guess what? We're going to lose. And I'm tired of losing. I'm really tired of losing. We lost in 18. We lost in 20. We lost in 22. It just didn't work. Thanks for trying. It didn't work, right? So we have to take things in a more galvanized, more positive, more aspirational direction than just constantly trying to relive the past. Because guess what? If that happens, we're just going to be sitting there on the day after Election Day, November 24, going, gee, I wonder what happened. Maybe we should have listened to Christie and Chris Sununu, and maybe we should have brought things in a different direction. We still have all the opportunity to do that, all the potential, all the time, but we got to put the hours in. We got to work. So with that, there's my plug for doing something else, for taking all of us in a new direction, and all of us taking that responsibility. It's not Chris's job or the other candidate's job to just galvanize this party. It's our job. We're the voters. We're the ones that have the control. It's our job to go out and hit the ground and work hard and make sure people feel optimistic, inspirational, and understand that there's one issue in this race. It ain't the economy. It ain't jobs. It ain't abortion. The issue is winning. That is our issue. And if we focus on how do we win in 24, boy, do the opportunities really start taking care of themselves. With that, let's hear it for the big guy himself, the one, the only, Governor Christie. Thank you, brother.
Well, there's nothing I'd rather have happen on the day after the debate in Miami than to come back here to Mary Pat and my second home in New Hampshire and be welcomed by one of the guys who I really believe has helped us set the standard for being a governor. And I've been talking to Chris Sununu since I first started coming up here as the vice chair of the RGA in 2012. And then through 2014, and then through his election in 2016. And let me just say, I am really, really gratified that he'd make time in his scheduled night to come and join us. I'm not gonna waste having him here. So after I get done talking a little bit off the top, we're gonna do questions together. So if they're really hard questions, I'll let Sununu answer them. And the real easy layup ones, I'll take myself, because his name's not on the ballot right now, mine is. So it's a good deal we have between the two of us. So I can't thank the governor enough for being here tonight, and we're going to put on, I think, the kind of conversation that New Hampshire demands and deserves, which is, and you saw it, I hope, last night, you asked the question, we'll answer it. I'm going to be like other people who will not answer the question that's asked. Because when you're president of the United States, you don't get to choose the questions. Circumstances around the country and the world present the questions to you. And then they want the American president to come up with the answers. And so that's what you're going to see from the two of us tonight. So I thank you, Governor, for being here. I appreciate it very much. I also, the last two times I came up here, I came up by myself. And what I found out was that doesn't work too well. People in New Hampshire are not, I'm telling you, I came up here, the McCabe's are here tonight. The first thing they asked me when I was up here, like, where's Mary Pat? Well, Mary Pat is here tonight, everybody. I'm glad my wife is with me. I want to start with you tonight where I ended last night on the stage in Miami. It is a gift to be an American. And I don't want any of us to ever forget that. It is a gift. People are dying around the world every day to get here. Not 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, today. People are dying to get to the United States of America because what they know is that every one of their hopes and dreams and aspirations can be made true here. And so I hear about all the different problems we have, and we're going to talk about them tonight and the solutions to try to fix them. But let us start by acknowledging that it is a gift to be an American, and a gift that, by the way, most of us didn't earn. I didn't earn it. My mother and father didn't earn it. It was my grandfather who was born on the boat from Sicily to the United States. Literally born in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, the good part of that story is, why was he born in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? Why did my great-grandmother do that? Well, because my great-grandfather and great-grandmother got their tickets to come to America. And my great-grandfather said to my great-grandmother, I'll go. You come after you have the baby, because she was 9 months pregnant. And my great-grandmother was one smart woman. She's like, you are not going to America by yourself, buddy. I'll have the baby on the boat if I have to, and she did. And my grandfather would always tell me that story, and he said to me, and you know what I'm proudest of? He said, I was 4 days old when I arrived at Ellis Island, and that day they made me an American. That day, they made me an American, and that's why you're an American. And he used to say that to me when I was this tall. It's a gift. It's a gift. And what are we going to do with that gift? That's the question of this election. What do we do with that gift that we've gotten? What's our obligation? What commitment do we need to make to each other? That's why I said last night, we can't truly love this country if we don't open our hearts to each other. I am running for president because I am tired of the anger and the division and the failure, because it exhausts you. It exhausts you to watch what Chris was referring to in D.C. and all the failure that's going on. And people can't get out of their own way. They want a gold medal because it took them only 3 weeks to elect a speaker. They want you to have a parade for them because they didn't close down the government. I mean, this yet is right. This is the stuff that passes for progress in Washington, D.C. today. That would never pass for progress in Concord, and that never passed for progress in Trenton in the 8 years I was there. I'm running for president because I want to be a president of consequence. Let me make sure you understand what I mean. I am tired of this country being divided into smaller and smaller groups, and then tell those groups how they're getting screwed, and then pit those groups against everybody else and make everybody just angry as hell at each other. That doesn't build a greater America. And if you wonder why people are feeling this way, it's because our leaders are doing it because they think it's to their political advantage for the short term. I want to be a president who does the big things again. I talked about Social Security last night, and you'll notice my answer was no different than the one I gave to all you guys here in New Hampshire when you asked about it. And no one else except for Governor Haley even wanted to go near it. Did you hear, and I'm going to use some New Jersey language right now because I'm tired and I can't think of anything else. Did you hear the bullshit from the other three candidates last night on there? Did you hear it? DeSantis and Scott and Ramaswamy, they're going to fix Social Security, which is going to go broke in 10 years, and have a 24% cut in every Social Security recipient's benefits. And the way they're going to fix it is, get ready, they're going to cut government spending in Washington, and they're going to grow the economy, and miraculously, it's not going to cost anybody anything, and it's all going to be fixed. That's the stuff that got us into the condition of being 10 years away from being broke in Social Security. None of these answers are easy, but I don't want to be elected to do the easy things. I want to be elected to do the hard things. The hard things. And Social Security is one of those hard things that we have to fix. We made a promise to every person who paid into that fund, that when they reached the age of retirement, that they would not retire in poverty, that they would not enjoy their senior years without having the money to pay their rent or put food on the table or heat their home. It's unacceptable in the richest country in the world. So we need to get to fixing it, and I will. And the reason you know I will is because when I was governor of New Jersey, we had a $150 billion pension gap. And with a Democratic legislature, I passed a $120 billion fix to that problem. With Democrats, with the unions, the public sector unions protesting on the front steps of the State House, I brought Democrats together with Republicans and we fixed the problem. And today, pensioners in New Jersey are not worried anymore about receiving their pension because we did the things that needed to be done to fix it. That's being a leader of consequence. And America's role in the world is another issue of consequence for us. We see what's happening in Israel, and we see what's happening in Ukraine. And America, I'm sorry to be the bearer of this news to you, but I believe it in my heart. America cannot be on the sidelines when you have dictators in Russia who invade a friendly neighbor and try to take their land and kill their people. America's never stood on the sidelines in that. And when we do, like we did in the late 30s, all it gave us was a couple of years of reprieve. And then 500,000 American men had to go to Europe and die to stop Hitler because we didn't do it right at the start. Same thing's happening in Ukraine right now and in Israel. We have a terrorist group who is committed to not just wiping Israel off the map, but they have said they want to kill every Jewish person in the world. America cannot stand by and let that happen. So it's hard. It's a burden. But it is the burden that the richest and freest country the world has ever known has to take leadership on. Because if we don't, let me tell you who's doing it. It's China and Russia and North Korea and Iran. They are the evil foursome. And they are all working together. All this stuff is connected, everybody. It's all connected. They are working with each other. And what they're trying to do is push America out of the leadership role in this world and take it for themselves. I do not want my grandchildren growing up in a world that is dominated by communist China and communist Russia, in places where they tell you how many children you can have, in places where they tell you where you can live, what your job's going to be, and they decide what you can hear. That's not what this country is about. And so tomorrow night, I am leaving to go to Israel because I want to see it for myself. Because I don't think you can try to be president of the United States and be afraid to go and see what's happening on the ground. So I'm going to go. I'm going to meet with the families of the kidnapped victims. There's still over 250 Israelis, Americans, and others who are kidnapped and being hidden in tunnels in the Gaza. I'm going to go meet with those families. I'm going to go meet with the Israeli Defense Force soldiers. I'm going to meet with government officials in Israel, and I want to see this for myself. Because if I'm going to continue to be as strong an advocate for doing everything we need to do to defend Israel, I got to see it for myself. And if you really want to lead, you need to go over and show the people of Israel that one person running for president of the United States cares enough to get on an airplane and get over there and do what needs to be done to find out how we fix this problem. Third, and then we'll go to questions. Governor Sununu brought this up, and I think I need to speak to it directly too. I ended my closing statement last night in the debate by saying that I'm going to open my heart to the American people as president, always let you know what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking and what I believe is best for our country. And I will promise you to restore honor integrity, and honesty to the Oval Office. So let me be plain about this. We cannot nominate a criminal for the Republican nomination for President of the United States. And I'm not somebody who speaks about this theoretically. I did this for 7 years. I ran the 5th largest U.S. Attorney's office in the country for 7 years in my home state of New Jersey, where we have some of the greatest criminals in America. We are so proud of our criminals. In fact, they make TV shows about our criminals. That's how good our criminals are. The whole country wants to see our crooks. Those are the people that I was fighting against for 7 years as the United States Attorney. And I can tell you this, Donald Trump is going on trial in Washington, D.C., criminal trial, the day before Super Tuesday. And the most important development in this entire campaign happened 2 weeks ago, when it was announced that Mark Meadows, his former chief of staff, has signed an agreement to cooperate with the government in that trial, has been given immunity, and will testify against Donald Trump. Now look, everybody, you can feel one way or another about the charges and the fairness of the prosecutors. It's open for discussion. I have opinions. Everyone else want to talk about them tonight, we can. But here's one thing you know for sure. Mark Meadows is no rogue Democratic prosecutor. Mark Meadows is no product of some two-tiered system of justice. Mark Meadows is from North Carolina and one of the founders of the Freedom Caucus in the Republican House of Representatives, and was Donald Trump's final chief of staff, who Donald Trump told me was as great as James Baker. And I remember saying to Meadows that day, well, at least he hadn't set the bar too high for you, Congressman. Good luck. And this is someone who stood by Donald Trump's side for all 4 years as president, first in the Congress, and then as his chief of staff in the White House. And I can tell you, because I was there preparing Donald Trump for the debates in 2020, Mark Meadows was Velcroed to his hip. Trump didn't go anywhere without Meadows with him. That's bad news for Donald Trump, because that means Mark Meadows knows every conversation, every briefing, everything he was told. And what we're told is he's going to testify that Donald Trump knew on election night that he was lying to us, that he had lost the election, that he knew he was lying, and that he continued that lie all the way through to January 6th and did everything he could to obstruct the election and to overturn it. Mark Meadows is going to testify that Donald Trump committed crimes right in front of his eyes. And Donald Trump is going to be sitting as far away as you and I are from Mark Meadows when his former chief of staff says that to a jury. I tried 130 political corruption cases in 7 years in New Jersey, and our record was 130-0. I know a little bit about this. He is going to be convicted. He is guilty of the crimes he has been charged with on January 6th, and Mark Meadows is going to prove it. Then what are we going to do? If he's still the front runner for the Republican nomination for president, let me tell you what's going to happen. And Chris would tell you the same thing. You're not going to see any commercials on television from Joe Biden that doesn't include Donald Trump, the convicted felon, convicted not by some Democrats, but by his own chief of staff. We will be stuck with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for another 4 years, and a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. And let me tell you what they're going to do. They're going to pack the Supreme Court. They're going to admit D.C. and Puerto Rico as states so that we could never have a majority in the United States Senate again. And they will make changes to this country that we will never be able to undo. This is not about him. This is about us. And we need someone to run our party and run our country once again who will put you first. Because all you ever hear Donald Trump talk about is himself. And you know what? His time on the stage is over, and I know who's going to end it. The 603 is going to end it. And when you're considering who to vote for, this is what I want you to picture tonight. Who do you want standing on that stage opposite Donald Trump to make the case against him? Who is tough enough and strong enough and unafraid enough to tell the truth and take him down? Because that's what's going to come down to. The Gov's right. The race is winnowing. More than half of the people who started are gone. And it's going to get even smaller by the time we get here. I guarantee you. My guess is going to be down to 3 or maybe 4 people by the time we get to New Hampshire. Who do you want? If you don't want Donald Trump as your nominee, who do you want? Who do you think can handle standing on that stage, look him in the eye, tell him the truth in a way that's not only going to convince our party, but convince the rest of the country that there's somebody who will be a president of consequence and put us first? That's why I'm here. That's why I'm running. So let's get to questions to get Sununu up here to answer some tough ones. Let's go. All right, who wants to start? Right here. Let's do it. They'll bring you a microphone. Coming right at you.
Governor, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was a very inspiring
Thank you.
talk you just gave. You mentioned truth a number of times, including your campaign slogan is "Because the truth matters." If you ask the average American, do politicians lie? Typically, after they stop laughing, they say, of course they lie.
Yep.
So we know that there's at least a perception of this in Washington, if not a reality. And we see it almost daily in the newspaper where somebody is accusing somebody else of lying. It used to be one party against the other. Now it's within parties itself. So there's an expression that the tone is set at the top for organizations in terms of ethical standards. The president clearly is at the top. So as president, how would you set the tone for Congress? Because there are a number of people in Congress that are training their staffers in unethical ways to be able to navigate through the system.
Well, look, you're absolutely right that the tone gets set at the top. And if you want the top job, you have to take that responsibility. And I did as governor of New Jersey for 8 years. If you go to New Jersey and you ask them, they'll say a lot of things about me. Some good, some not so good. But what they will never say is that I lied to them. They'll say I didn't agree with him. They'll say I think he was a little too tough on that. They'll say that I think he's ambitious. They'll say all those things. But you will not find anybody who said I lied. What I did when I became governor was I brought, and I'll give you the context on this so you guys all know. I talked about those political corruption convictions. When I was U.S. attorney, I put 10% of the state legislature in jail. We have 120 members of the state legislature in New Jersey. 12 of them I sent to jail during my 7 years. And then I go down and become governor. So you can imagine the welcoming committee I had when I got there. But one of the things I brought with me was I brought 29 former assistant United States attorneys with me to populate my administration. Because I wanted to send a message to every one of those departments and a message to the legislature, which was, I'm bringing truth tellers with me. I'm bringing people who know that the only thing I will accept is doing the right thing. And anybody who doesn't won't be there any longer. And I think personnel is policy. Who you pick and how they conduct themselves reflects directly upon all of you. So first thing is I would pick people who I knew, first and foremost, would understand that only the truth will be tolerated in the Christie administration. And even if that truth's bad for us on a particular day. Because the other thing I learned in 8 years as governor is you have good days, you're going to have bad days. Not every day is going to be good. And the days that are bad only get worse when you lie. You make a mistake, you belly up to the bar and admit it, and people are forgiving if they think you're telling the truth. Second thing that's really important is to develop a relationship with the Congress. One of the things I did with the state legislature, I thought was a small thing, but turned out to be a really big thing, was I called every state legislator every year on their birthday. This became like a thing. Well, I started to do it because I thought it was a decent idea. And then, and I usually would call them in the morning because I had an hour-and-a-half drive every day to the State House. So that's when I would do it. But some mornings I'd be doing other things. And then if the legislator didn't get their phone call on their birthday, in the morning, they thought, well, what's going on? And one time, one of them called me and said, it's my birthday today, right? I said, man, I was in a meeting this morning. I was going to call you this afternoon. I use that as kind of a funny example of the bigger point, which is it takes time to develop these relationships. This is a human business still. And I spent a lot of time, I'm sure Governor Sununu never has done this, but I spent some time with people in the legislature who not only I didn't agree with, but I didn't even like. But it's my job. I'm the governor. And I have to develop relationships with those folks. And when you do, I used to have a saying in our office, whenever anybody would say, should we do this meeting or shouldn't we? I almost always was saying yes. And what I'd say to them is, remember, it's a lot harder to hate up close. We have hate in our system. And the way to break down that hate is to get close. Find out about their spouses, their children, their grandchildren. Find out why they got into politics in the first place. What were they hoping to accomplish when they got to Washington? And how's it worked for them? And what can I do for them as president to help make their aspirations come true? It's not just about mine. They got elected too. And we don't have that anymore. Barack Obama didn't do it, didn't care to do it. Donald Trump didn't do it and didn't care to do it. And Joe Biden's just too damn tired to do it, even if he wanted to, right? He can't do it either. The last president we had who even cared about this was President Bush, and he did it in the first 9 months, and then 9/11 came, and it changed the entire approach to everything. So part of breaking down that cycle of hate and anger and division is to spend the time we're going to have to spend to make people understand that even if we disagree, there's no reason for us to hate each other. And that's why I said last night in my closing that you can't truly love America unless you're going to open up your heart to all Americans. And that's on all of us. But if I'm not doing it, there's no obligation for you to even think about doing it if I'm not going to. And so I don't know. You got anything to add to that, Gov? Because you've had a little experience.
Well, I used to call everyone on their birthday until I looked at my calendar and I said, wait a minute, Bill Boyd's not 29. Why is everyone in the legislature claimed to be 29? This is all a bunch of bullshit. No, look, transparency. I mean, that's it, right? As the governor said, when you're governor, that's why I'm partial to governors, not because we all have the same title, because you need to be transparent or you're called on your stuff. You need to be accountable. Transparency is the foundation of public trust. Right? Governors get that. Governors know that. Governors know you can't say one thing one day and something else the next day because there's a whole different sense of accountability with governors than anybody else. So, no, that's it.
Yeah. And by the way, one of the things I want to emphasize, one of the things that the Gov said in his remarks, it does matter to know how to get things done. There were a number of moments where I wanted to burst out laughing last night on that debate stage. But one of them was when Vivek Ramaswamy said, we need a CEO to run America. We've been there, okay? We had a CEO for 4 years. That didn't work out too well. And if Donald Trump didn't work out well, Vivek Ramaswamy, if he ever became president, would make you pine for the good old days, okay? This is somebody who really, Nikki and I were on the stage next to each other last night, as you saw. And during one of the commercial breaks, I turned to Nikki and I said, where did this guy come from? And I'm not going to tell you Nikki's answer. When Nikki comes up here the next time, you can ask her, where did you tell Christie you thought Ramaswamy came from? That'd be a good first question in her next town hall meeting, and she'll get a good laugh out of it, I guarantee you. We need someone who knows how to do this. Government is different. It's not business. When you're the CEO of a business, you say, I want this done, and if people don't do it, they get fired. Yeah, in government, sometimes, but more times than not, you got to massage it and mold it and move people and convince people and cajole people. And that's what governors learn how to do. And I learned how to do it in one of the bluest states in this country. I want you to remember, it's been 50 years since we in New Jersey elected a Republican to the United States Senate. We have the longest streak of any state in America. When I got elected governor, we have a 80-member lower house. I never had more than 32 people in that lower house out of 80. And I never had more than 15 senators out of 40. It wasn't close, everybody. Like, they dominated. And I had to learn how to work with that and make things happen. That's the training you need to go to Washington and move the Congress. Not being in a red state, with all due respect to red states, who have Republican legislatures who go, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. That ain't the way it works. It's not the way it works up here for him. It isn't the way it worked for me. And that's the kind of experience you need. And that's the kind of experience we'll bring. And I did get reelected. We'll get to that later, Mark. All right, yes, sir. Let them bring a microphone over to you. And thank you for your service first.
I watched the debate last night, and I think you all agreed that the border should be shut down. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Now, but no one mentioned the Constitution. Right? Now let me quote 4 parts of the Constitution. And I may be a little astray, but you can check it. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the right to protect from an invasion. Article 1, Section 10 gives the state the right to close their border to repel an invasion. Article 4, Section 4 says the government shall protect every state from invasion. Now, would you say this is an invasion when you get millions of people coming in from 170 countries all across the world? Yeah? You agree?
All right. Well, okay, got more?
No,
All right.
I simply said, I wish someone had the guts in Congress to do their job, because they can shut it down tomorrow. They won't. No guts.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, as a recovering lawyer, I think you quoted all those things right. So I'll check you on the way home, but I think you were right on those. Look, the answers last night, while longer than our normal answers were allowed to be, we got 30 additional seconds last night. So instead of a minute, we got a minute and a half. And you can't give a full answer, but here you can. This is a complicated problem. And the Congress hasn't acted for the exact reasons you said. Some of them want the invasion. Some of them believe it's their political advantage to have the invasion, because they think that some of those folks will become their voters eventually, right? So that's part of it. Part of it's a political motivation. But do not be fooled by folks who say we're going to take our army and invade Mexico, okay? You and I both know it's not going to happen, okay? And Hugh Hewitt tried to get at that last night with Governor DeSantis to say, how exactly are you going to do that? Like, we're really going to invade Mexico? And then he said, we're going to shoot him stone cold dead. Well, that sounds real tough, right? But that's TV tough guy stuff. And then this one I couldn't believe last night. I had heard he had said this. And I said, it can't be. I remember going to Mary Pat and saying, someone just told me, because someone from up here, a supporter of ours, went to one of Ron's meetings and said, you won't believe what DeSantis said today. And he told me, I said, that can't be. Can't have done that. And then he repeated it last night on the stage. He said he's going to build a wall across the entire border and Mexico's going to pay for it. Have we heard that before? We heard that 8 years ago. I was here. I was running. I remember. And Donald Trump built 52 miles of new wall in 4 years. Hell, if Mexico knew he's only going to build 52 miles, they might have been willing to pay for it. 52 miles of new wall. Let me promise you something. I think it's a fine idea to have a wall. I have no problem with it. But we're going to pay for it. And you know why? Because there's no way to get Mexico to pay for it. They're a sovereign country. We present them with the bill. You know what they're going to do? Into the shredder. Next. That's why I say it's a complicated issue. Not that it's not solvable, but don't fall for this TV tough guy baloney. Because the Constitution is also not going to permit us to be shooting people stone cold dead as soon as they come across the border. And by the way, Customs and Border Patrol officers are not going to do it unless their lives are threatened. Because that's the way they're trained. If their lives are threatened, you bet they'll use their firearms to protect themselves. But they're not just because you're coming across, it doesn't mean you deserve to be shot dead. And we're not going to do it. The biggest problem is we're not going to do it. So how about we have 5 things that we need to do to close down the border. The first thing I would do on day one is sign an executive order that sends the National Guard to the border. Our Customs and Border Patrol officers are overwhelmed. And let me tell you why. In the last 11 months, they have averaged 200,000 encounters a month at the border. We simply don't have enough men and women down there to be able to deal with it. So the first thing, and this you can do immediately, is send the National Guard down there to stand shoulder to shoulder with our Customs and Border Patrol officers to stop the invasion. Second, we need to add 10,000 Customs and Border Patrol officers. Now that's going to take a year, because by the time you recruit them and train them and deploy them, it's going to take a year. So that's why you put the National Guard there to start. Third, we absolutely need to triple the number of immigration judges we have. When people come over the border and our laws guarantee them asylum hearing, it now takes 4 years. 4 years. Guess what? You can't detain them for 4 years. So they release them into the United States and say, hey, do me a favor, come back to El Paso in 4 years for your hearing, or we might send you back. They're not coming back. Okay? They're going to stay in the United States. They're going to hide in this huge continental country, and they're not coming back. Fourth, we need to double the number of detention beds we have at the border. I told you 200,000 encounters a month. You know how many detention beds we have at the border? 38,000. Now, I went to law school because I couldn't do math or science, but even I could do that math. It doesn't work. So I doubled it to 80,000. But that will probably take you at least 6 months to get done. And then fifth, we have to get to the core of the problem that you talked about, which is a president has to be willing to put their political popularity on the line to change the immigration system. We can't any longer let anybody who wants to come over this border and claim that they're here for political asylum and have that be the way it goes. And we need to go back to a merit-based immigration system. We have 6 million open jobs in this country right now, today. 6 million open jobs. We're not going to be able to grow our economy the way we need to if we don't fill those jobs. Well, if there's 6 million open jobs in this economy today, what that tells you is those are jobs that Americans either can't do or don't want to do. Every time we've had that problem in our country's history, what have we done? We've used legal immigration to come to the United States to fill those jobs. But we have to do it based on merit. Which kind of jobs do we have a need for? And if you have those skills, you go to the front of the line and you come in here legally to fill those jobs. Second thing we need to do to change those immigration laws is to make every employer use E-Verify so that the employer can have the comfort of knowing when I hire somebody, they're actually here legally. And if they're not here legally, you can't hire them. That will deter people from coming over. If they come over, almost all of them come over for money. They can make money here, and then they can send that money back to their families in Venezuela, in Colombia, in all of the Central American countries where these folks are coming from. So we need to do that. Now, to do that, though, we're going to have to give the Democrats something because they don't want E-Verify and they don't want merit-based immigration. And for 20 years now we've been saying, no, we're not going to give them anything when we're in charge. And when they're in charge, they say, no, we're not going to give the Republicans anything. And so now we sat for 40 years with immigration laws not being changed, and we just fall further and further and further behind. So we got to do that, and a president's got to be willing to do that. And Obama didn't do it when he had a supermajority in the Senate where he could have passed anything he wanted. He had 60 votes and a big majority in the House. Trump didn't do it when he had majorities in the House and the Senate. And Biden has done the exact opposite. He doesn't want to change it. He wants the invasion to continue. So let's be smart about this. It has to be done. We can do it. We can do it in the near term to stop it from happening. But that near-term fix is not going to be the only fix we need. We need a long-term fix for it, too. Because if we don't, then the minute our attention gets diverted onto something else, if the laws haven't changed, it's just going to go back to happening again. And we've seen that happen over and over again over the last 40 years. So we need to do that. So a president has to be willing to put his credibility on the line and his popularity on the line to be able to get a deal done so that we can make progress. And what we need to know is that not every deal is going to be 100% of what we want. But in your life, when do you ever get 100% of what you want? I've been married for 37 years. I never get 100%, and neither does she. And maybe that's why we're still together. Because if one of us got 100% for a decent streak, seems to me the other one would be hitting the exits, right? So you got to do this. And Congress and the relationship between the president and the Congress is very much like that. You got to be willing to make a deal. As long as they do the things we need to do to secure the border, have a merit-based immigration system, and make sure that people can't employ folks, who are here illegally, then we're going to have to deal with them as well. And so what do they want ultimately? I'm not exactly sure. There'd be some stuff I'd be willing to agree to. There'd be some stuff I wouldn't be willing to agree to. But that's part of what you have to do is engage in that negotiation. But on day one, we send the National Guard down there to send a show of force to say to people, if you come over, you're not going to make it. We're going to stop you, and we're going to send you back. And we don't have enough people to get that done right now. That's the fact. And because the wall didn't get built, we don't have that barrier either. And so we don't even have that help. And believe me, the wall will get built. But when it does, we're paying for it, not Mexico. And be careful about any politician who tells you they're going to get Mexico to pay for it, because they're not. And you've already seen that. Yes, ma'am, on the aisle there.
So when October 7th, I don't really want to.
Well, but they need to hear you.
Because I want to read something.
Well, that's okay, but you can hold it in one hand and hold your other.
All right.
Okay? It's all right.
Yeah, okay. When October 7th happened, the first thing that I thought, and I talked to anyone who would listen to me, was that Putin knew about it, that it was a plan. And then I heard a top advisor to Zelensky, Igor Zogba, who said that he was speaking for the continued need to support Ukraine. And he said it wasn't a mistake that October 7th, the attack happened because it was Putin's birthday on that day. And he said that some of Hamas has been trained by Russian Wagner mercenaries fighting against Ukraine. And he said that Ukraine and Israel wars are not separate wars, that what's happening now is a hybrid World War III, and that they're doing it to weaken the United States. And I wonder if you agree with that this is just a big plan, and shouldn't we call out some of the people in the GOP that will not support continued support for Ukraine?
Yeah, look, I don't know about Putin's birthday and all the rest of that being the plan, but I absolutely believe that, as I said off the top, that this is all coordinated. These are the four evil dictatorship countries in the world with the most power: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And their goal, both individually and collectively, is to diminish the United States' influence around the world so they can fill that vacuum. And so I absolutely agree with what the person you quoted from Zelensky's government said. And remember, everybody, I went to Ukraine also. A month after I got into the election, I went to Ukraine. And I saw what was going on the ground. And I met for an hour with President Zelensky. And one of the things he said two things to me that he asked me to say anytime I get in front of a group of Americans. One, to say thank you. He said, we would be occupied by Russia right now if it wasn't for the United States of America and its people supporting us. And he said, second, tell them I will never, ever accept American troops into Ukraine. He said, we've been occupied by Russia. We didn't like it. And with all due respect, we don't be occupied by you either. All we want is for you to help us get the weapons that we need, and we'll take care of the Russians. And when you think about it, we've contributed 5% of 1 year's Pentagon budget to Ukraine in weapons, and they've degraded 50% of the Russian military. That's a pretty good return on investment, everybody, and not one drop of American blood at the same time. So, yes, look, last night to me was disappointing because the only two people on that stage who said we'd support Ukraine were me and Nikki Haley. Ron DeSantis gave the same kind of I don't know what the hell the answer was answer. I think the Europeans should do more. And Kristen Welker kept coming back and saying, so would you support aid for Ukraine or wouldn't you? And he wouldn't answer. Vivek Ramaswamy wants to make a deal with Putin. This is beauty. He wants to give Russia all the land they totally taken from Ukraine. He wants to promise Russia will never admit Ukraine to NATO. And in return, he's going to ask Putin to not talk to China anymore. It's like, it's so stupid. Is it any wonder he went to Harvard? I mean, seriously, right? I mean, good Lord Almighty. And Tim Scott now, who at the beginning of this race, in the first debate, was totally for helping Ukraine, now all of a sudden, apparently change of heart, now he doesn't want to deal with it. Look, this is not about politics. If we make it about politics, we're going to lose. This is about principle. What do we stand for? And who do we stand with? And I, last night on the stage, said, we made a promise in 1992. And nobody else on the stage talked about this last night. But 1992, when the Soviet Union fell at the end of 91, 92, a lot of Soviet nuclear missiles were still in Ukraine, because Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union then. The Ukrainians wanted to keep them. And the United States came to them and said, we don't want more nuclear proliferation. Can you please return the missiles to the Russians? And they said, we don't really trust the Russians. We prefer not. And we said, no, please give them back, because if you do, and they invade you, we'll protect you. A 31-year-old American promise is no less valid than a promise we make today. This is our promise. And do you think Russia would be in Ukraine today if they still had those nukes? I don't think so. So if you're Zelensky, you're saying, rightfully, look, I'm not asking you to send soldiers here. Just give us the arms we need to beat them, and we will. So I do believe it's all coordinated.
The war in Israel is a distraction with that Putin and Iran decided to do this.
Yes,
So
I do. But it can only be a distraction if we let it be. I think that's their plan. They want to distract us. But it's only a distraction if we let it be a distraction. If we say, no, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can support Israel and we can support Ukraine. We can do that. But if we let them distract us, then their plan is won. And guess what's going to happen? Something else is going to happen someplace else. They're just going to keep adding to it. Then what happens if China goes to Taiwan? Like, look, everybody, this is connected, and we have to be smart about it. And the only thing that will deter these folks is American strength and certainty. They got to know that we're going to do it. And I will promise you this. When I'm president, they will know. They will know. You want to add anything to that? All right. I hate to turn my back on folks, and then I don't call on them, so why don't we give you, and I'll give you mine.
You talked about political corruption, and I'm deeply concerned about the way we're funding campaigns in this country. Would you change the way we fund elections so that voters can own elections and have more influence, and not just 12 mega donors, 6 on each side, that are controlling the influence in Washington?
Money in politics stinks. And the only thing that's worse than money in politics is being the person who has to try to raise the money. Let me guarantee you. Like, it is one of the worst things I have to do to be able to do this. Because I don't want to ask anybody for anything. I really don't, except for your vote. And I am asking for that. But here's the problem, right? Constitution guarantees free speech. Supreme Court said that money is speech, your ability to endorse someone and help them. Here's what I would do to change it. I would take all the limits off of contributions, because I'm thinking about this now. And Mary Pat is like my lead fundraiser, because no one says no to her. It's really great. But she's my lead fundraiser. You're running for president of the United States. You have to raise money, $3,300 a person, maximum, to run across this entire country. It's crazy. I would take all the limits off it, but 48-hour disclosure. So if some rich guy or woman writes me a $20 million check, you go on my website, you know about it immediately. And if all of a sudden I change my position from where I was to where that person is, you can make your own judgment and reach your own conclusion. And I trust you to do that. But every attempt we've made to keep money out of politics doesn't work. So McCain-Feingold got passed all those years ago, right? That was going to fix everything. It's worse now than it ever was, because now you have these groups that everybody sets up where we don't even have to tell you who the donors are. And you don't even know. And it is a destructive system. So let's stop pretending that we can take money out of politics, because everything costs money. This costs money tonight. Like, we had to pay here at the VFW. We had to pay for the folks that are here, the staff, the cameras, all the rest of the stuff that we have. We had to pay for that. So everything you do in politics costs money. So we can't take money out. But what we can do is what Chris said before, transparency. Like, if you know where I'm getting my money from, then you can evaluate every utterance that comes out of my mouth and say, like, this is what he really thinks, or is this what the guy who gave him 30 million thinks? I think that's the core of what the corruption you're talking about. Because when you don't know that, you don't know whether I really believe what I'm saying and will do it, or whether I'm just following some donor who gave me a lot of money. In the end, I think that's the only way to fix this. I don't know if do you have other ideas on campaign finance?
Yeah, I'll add this, and I'll give only the perspective because we're a small state. When the U.S. Senate race runs here, $40 million is spent. 99% of it is raised outside of the state. That drives me crazy. And those folks do not have our interest at heart. I have a slightly different approach. I'll say this: I hate super PACs. It's because that's where the dark money comes in. I don't hate advocacy groups, don't get me wrong, but I hate that folks create advocacy groups that effectively create these other avenues to put tons of money. A lot of it's dark money. Some of it's disclosed, some of it's not. And I'd say this: you have a candidate, you have a campaign, you have transparency right there. Everyone gets one candidate, one campaign committee, complete transparency on where all those dollars, as the governor talked about, and get rid of all this other nonsense. And if those folks, because that's not limiting free speech, if those folks want to give, they can give to the candidate. But you can't do these shadow dark market nonsense. McCain-Feingold opened that door. It absolutely has to be shut, because then you're voting on that candidate based on their message and their message alone. But they can put money behind it, right? We could put however much money they want, but it's still their message and their candidacy, and not being driven by all those outside forces. So that's it. I think it's a great idea.
We agree. And by the way, then you can hold us responsible. Like, how many times do you see ads and it's from an outside group, right? And then you go to the candidate and you go, what about that ad you ran against Sununu? And you go, oh, I didn't have anything to do with that ad. That was like the people for Greater New Hampshire ran that ad. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, right? I mean, that's why what Chris says is so right, because in the end, one candidate, one campaign, and that's it. Then you can't run away from what you're saying. You got to be held accountable for every bit of advertising that gets put out in support of your candidacy. And everybody else, like he said, you want to help? Great. Write a check here. Happy to take your help. But understand, too, the candidates have to know that you have to be a professional ingrate. Like, you have to take people's money and then not do exactly what they want you to do. What I say to all my donors is, what you get when you write a check is me. Some of them are reassured by that, and some of them are deeply disturbed. But that's what you get. That's it. And if they don't know that, we're lost. And that's why people are so cynical in the country about it, and they deserve to be. So I thought it was a really good point. And I want to tell you, that's I don't know which number town hall this is from up here, but it's a lot. It's the first campaign finance question I've been asked, and I've been surprised that I haven't been asked anything about that, because I do think it's one of the roots of the problem that we have in our system. So thanks for asking it. I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. She'll give you a mic.
Thank you for taking my question. I would love it if you could say hi to my dad, who's watching you on live stream right now.
Yeah.
His name's Walter.
Walter?
Yes.
Where's
and
Walter live?
He lives in Litchfield, New Hampshire, and he
Okay.
watches you every time. He was a big Trump supporter. He's left the dark side, and now he is 100% on you. So he's gonna kill me.
I think it's that camera with the red light on. And Walter, I love you, Walter. Welcome to the side of brightness and light. And hopefully you can come see me in person at some point. So, all right.
I did want to ask you. He really wanted me to ask you this too.
Sure.
We're all worried about the economy, and I teach high school, and I also have children of my own who are young adults, and I teach seniors in high school, and they're terrified of owning a home or getting an apartment or living a life or any kind of adulting. And I guess I want to know, what specifically would you want to do to lower inflation, help with housing costs? I mean, mortgages are crazy, and just get our economy going.
Well,
And can I also ask you?
Sure. Sorry, Walter, one
I'm
more
sorry.
thing.
I'm sorry. Would you and Governor Sununu please come to my classroom, either Zoom or something, and speak to my seniors? Please, please, please.
Yeah, sure. What high school?
Alvern and Hudson.
That's an invitation.
All right.
I'm there.
All right.
Woo! You got it on?
All right.
There.
An easy one.
So my folks will give you a card. We'll set it up with the Gov. We'll do a Zoom together into your classroom. That would be great. We'll do
I'm
that.
so excited.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit last night. I think that what we've seen over the last number of years, the last couple of years of the Trump administration and all the years of the Biden administration, is that when government just keeps printing and printing and printing and spending and spending and spending money, that it causes inflation. It just happens. And in fact, you had Democratic economists who were warning against it, and none of them listened. Trump didn't listen, and Biden didn't listen. We need to get the economy back in the hands of the people who actually create the jobs and the people who make things happen. So how do we bring inflation down? The first thing is energy policy, and we talked about this a little bit last night. Energy affects everything we do. Like Lester Holt last night didn't quite get this, right? He was like, no, I want an answer that will do it immediately, and energy's not that. So Governor Christie, what are you going to do immediately? I said, energy. Lester, let me explain it to you. If we take all the crazy regulations that the Biden administration has put on off, and Doug Burgum, who's been in this race in North Dakota, one of our real energy producing states, explained to us that energy production in North Dakota was cut in half in the first 6 months of the Biden administration because of all the restrictions he put on. It cost us 1 million barrels of oil a day by doing that. And guess what we did? We went in the beginning of the Biden administration, before Ukraine, we went and bought that 1 million barrels a day from Russia. I don't know why you'd prefer to buy oil from Putin than Doug Burgum, but hey, that was Joe Biden and his thought. So the first thing we do on inflation is we open up all the energy sources that we have in the country and let them flowing. We will not only be energy independent, we'll be an energy exporter. But how does that deal with inflation? Because the minute the markets know that, oh, wow, there's going to be a ton of oil and gas in the market, the prices come down. And Lester also, well, it doesn't happen immediately. No, Lester, it does. Because it's a futures market. They don't trade on what oil is today. They trade on oil, what's going to be in the future. And so when they see a whole influx of oil and natural gas coming into the system, the prices are going to go down. And that will immediately hit us at the pump. And how does that affect your food prices? Well, your food gets brought to the supermarket by trucks. And when those trucks have to pay more for diesel and for gasoline, they're going to pass that cost on to you. Everybody. And, every one of the farmers, that's creating that food to be brought to your market, they wind up having to run tractors and all of the equipment they need to run. And when the gas goes up, it affects them too. So everything you have affects that. On housing, when you bring inflation down, interest rates will come down. Now think about it. The people who are in real trouble right now are the ones who had adjustable mortgages, right? Who got mortgages at 1.5%, 2.5%, and now they're paying 7 or 8%. You're talking about adding an extra $1,500 a month to the average home. In terms of their more, like, how do they deal with it? And then if you're a new, younger couple or a couple that's buying a home for the first time or an individual is buying a home for the first time, how can you afford to do it if interest rates are at 7 or 8%? It becomes prohibitive. You can't do it. And so what does that do? It depresses the housing market because people aren't buying because they can't afford to. So more new housing isn't being built. And so it drives the prices of houses up. So now you got housing prices going up and interest rates going up, and it's a double whammy on people who want to do it. So that's why bringing inflation down concurrently brings interest rates down, and then you can make housing more affordable. And on top of it, it's going to create jobs, because then people are going to say, I need more housing. And there's going to be an economic incentive for people to build more housing because they're going to be able to sell it. And so that helps our economy in that way. Third, you know that for a lot of the young people you're talking about who either are in college now or getting ready to go to college, they got to be scared to death about student loans. And let me tell you why they should be. Because the college system in this country has totally taken advantage of the good nature of the people of this country. Totally taken advantage of it. Because we've said we want everybody who wants to go to college to be able to go to college. And if you don't have the money, we'll loan it to you. Well, these SOBs, that means there's an endless flow of money. So I can raise tuition, room and board, and everything else much higher than the rate of inflation and get away with it, because you go to the students and just say, well, just borrow more. Well, you have students coming out with 6 figures of student loan debt, right? And then how are they going to, that's their house. Now look, Mary Pat and I had student loans, we both did. We got married, I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but we were 23 and 22. I was still in law school, Mary Pat just got out of college, and we had all this student loan debt. And it took us 10 years to pay it off. And, you know, during that period of time, we weren't going to buy a house. I mean, you just couldn't afford to do it. Your mortgage was the student loan payment. And we didn't have nearly as much debt as the students today have. And so, you know, we relate to this. We have 4 children. We put 3 of them through college. We got a 4th one left at Notre Dame. She's a junior at Notre Dame. And I'm sure most of you in this audience know this, but maybe some of the people watching don't. In August, I was up here campaigning, and my daughter texted me, Bridget, and she said, remember, my tuition payment is due this week. I know you're really busy, but, you know, you got to pay. So I went home, and I kind of dug out the bill. First semester at Notre Dame, tuition, room and board, and fees, $40,200. First semester. First semester. It's now, like, I don't get it. It's gone up exponentially. And the reason I know it is because our oldest daughter went to Notre Dame. And she graduated only 5 years ago. It has gone since when she graduated to now, in 5 years, from $62,000 a year to $80,000 a year. In 5 years. What the hell is going on? It's South Bend, Indiana. What's going on out there? Like, you know, it's not that expensive, but they make it that way. And so all of those things have an impact on the hopefulness of those students who look at all this and say, what's going to happen to me? Well, of course it does. Yeah, you got to pay the loans. And by the way, if your families that have put money away for retirement, right, and then you say, well, maybe I'll dig into a little bit of that retirement money and pay a little taxes to be able to make sure my kids don't have to pay as much, well, that comes back to bite you at the back end. What do you got on this?
Oh, I have a lot, but I'll be quick. I'll start backwards. On retirement, guess what inflation does? It kills your retirement. Mm-hmm. Kills your 401ks, kills your pensions, kills all of that, because inflation devalues your dollar. So no one gets hurt more by inflation than low-income families who cannot afford it. It's a tax on the poor. That's really what it is. And seniors on fixed incomes. Inflation are crushers for them. But the two other very Republican ideals, the conservative ideals, one thing I want to hit is health care, right? Whatever happened to President Trump when he said he was going to get rid of Obamacare? Still stuck with it. Nobody can afford health care. There's no free market in health care. With a Republican governor at the helm in the White House, you know what that we believe in first? Let the states have the power. Let a free market reign in some of the highest cost issues that we deal with everyday Americans. Because, by the way, we didn't hit the other big one. Does anyone think inflation's at 5%? No, of course it's not 5. It's not even 10%. Real inflation in your lives is closer to 30 to 50% minimum. Let me give you a quick example. The Thanksgiving turkey that was $14 in 2019, if it was 10% inflation, it'd be about $15.50 today. No, it's like $26 for a Thanksgiving turkey, for that same turkey right now. That's crazy. And the governor's absolutely right. Energy, energy, energy. Because when energy costs come down, the transportation costs go down, the fertilizer costs come down, everything, all the costs that make everything happen drop. And they do drop on a prospective market. He's absolutely right. So a free market with a president that believes in letting states fight it out. You know, remember the founding fathers? They were wicked smart, right? That's what they said. This is a republic. It isn't about Washington. It's about Washington having leadership to believe in the states where you have more control of free market reigns. We have seniors sitting here. Wouldn't it be great if states could actually negotiate their own pharmaceutical prices? And we controlled Medicare, and we actually controlled Medicaid, and we had the power to negotiate a free market price in healthcare, which is the biggest driver. American debt right now, American credit card debt today, over $1 trillion. That isn't government debt. That is your debt. That is your kids' debt. That is real. And that's what's holding folks back. And it's all driven by inflation. Real inflation, which is not 5%. Someone said Biden's lying about telling us it's 5%. I said he's not smart enough to know. Let's give the guy, he's napping. He really has no freaking idea what it is. But the last thing Joe Biden is doing is math, okay? But that's how, you know who's lying? It's the Janet Yellens. It's the Secretary of Treasury. It's the Fed. They know and they knew better and they didn't manage it and control it. So I think with a Republican that fulfills on the mission of free market health care, a Republican that fulfills on the mission of driving and allowing states to compete in the market, which increases competition, which lowers costs, that's really where it is. And yeah, you'll have some winners and losers. The red states are going to win, and the blue states are going to go, oh, crap, I guess we need a more free market approach to things. We got to drive our costs down, and then everybody benefits from that. So there are ways to do it, and you're right. God bless Lester Holt. I think he's a nice guy, but you got to know what you're talking about before you ask the questions. But,
exactly right. All right, let's see. Let's go to the back. I'm in the back. Young lady in the back. I won't miss you. Remain calm. All is well.
So is this working? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I have been taking notes for quite a while on President Trump. And one of the things I noticed last night watching the debate is that obviously he wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And the Republican Party is so powerless to get him to show up. And I know why he's not going to show up, mainly because of you, because you'll call a spade a spade.
Yes, I will.
I want to talk about the fact that he's only 3 years younger than Biden, and he has been slipping. He thinks he's running against Obama. I mean, I'm so tired of other candidates not addressing the truth, okay? Yep. And last night, I don't know if you heard, but Vivek was allowed to get away with saying that the election was false. He's an election denier, and I know what he's doing. He wants to be the VP. So, in my notes, Trump is an insurrectionist and does not believe in the Constitution because he was willing to terminate it if that's what it took for him to get back into the White House. If elected, he has a hit list of those who have stood against him. Trump was convicted of stealing nuclear secrets, stealing military war plans to invade Iran, stealing military assessments on the weakest parts of the U.S. military. Trump tried to steal a presidential election and headed up a conspiracy to get fake electors and called Georgia's Secretary of State to steal votes. Trump is responsible for the mishandling of COVID. He denied that it was coming, and he did not prepare businesses, so shutdowns lasted longer because of that.
All right, so give me a question now.
the question is, why aren't people talking about this?
They're cowards. That's why. I mean, look, this isn't hard to figure out. And you saw it last night. Nikki Haley said Donald Trump was the right president at the right time. I don't know what the hell time that was. Okay? Tim Scott has said, I'll tell you the one person I know is not responsible January 6th, Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know. I was watching that day. He was standing out in front of the White House, told all those people to go up to Capitol Hill and stop it. And he said he was going to march with them. That's when I knew he was lying. The only place Donald walks that far is a golf course, and he doesn't even walk then, he takes a cart, and if there's a chance he'll have a fingernail broken, he's not putting himself in harm's way. So, look, the reason people aren't doing it is twofold. One, because they're scared. They're scared of him. I've known him for 22 years. So I know he is a paper tiger. He is no one to be scared of. He just isn't. Secondly, people are trying to have it both ways. Okay? You can't have it both ways. Your mother taught you this. At least mine did. Can't have it both ways, Christopher. You got to be one way or another. And last night, you see Nikki saying he's the right president at the right time, but he added $8 trillion in debt and we'll never forgive him. Well, hell, man, which one is it? Which one is it? I mean, look, I understand politics. Believe me, I've been in it for a long time. And I've been fairly successful. I know how this works. But there comes a moment that things are so important, you got to dig your heels in the dirt and stand up. And so if you're discontent, and rightfully so, with the fact that people won't address it, and by the way, last night, we didn't get one question about it. Not one. I mean, think about that. This is the Republican primary for President of the United States. Our front runner is out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions. Think about that. He's out on bail. And we don't talk about it? And quite frankly, because I believe that you should answer the questions that are asked, as I said at the front, I wasn't going to go off on some toot last night and say, I know you just asked me about the 300-ship Navy, but let me talk to you about Donald Trump's crimes. That's just what ticks voters off, and they're like, no, why would I answer the question that was asked? But you just asked it. It is, to me, simple and fundamental. He is beneath the office that he held. His conduct disqualifies him from being president of the United States. It's not a law that disqualifies him. It's not some court that disqualifies him, and I don't want a court to disqualify him. I want him to be defeated because the American people deserve better. They deserve someone who's going to put them first. They deserve someone who's going to tell them the truth. And we now know that he was lying about the election right from the beginning. And he's convinced tens of millions of Americans that the election was stolen. And I can't blame them completely in the beginning because I was watching that night at 2:30 in the morning. I was on the set at ABC doing commentary. When he came out and told everyone from behind the seal of the president in the East Room of the White House that the election was stolen. People say, well, he's president of the United States. He must know something we don't know. Let me fill you in. He doesn't. He made it up. And he made it up because his fragile ego can't deal with the fact that he was losing to Joe Biden. That is a depressing moment. I have to give him that. You're losing. No one had ever lost to Joe Biden outside the state of Delaware, ever. He had run for president 3 times before and lost 3 times. So I understand being depressed about that. But, in one of my favorite movies, the old Godfather movies, Hyman Roth said, this is the life we've chosen. Chris and I know when you run for election, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Not me. Just saying.
I didn't say you.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that term.
I didn't say you had. I just said you knew that it could happen.
I've heard it.
Heaven forbid. Definitely not. But look, I can do one more question, so I want to get to it before everybody goes down, but because you had a lot of
I
time.
know, but my kids really wanted me to ask you this. Nobody talked about it last night, is climate change.
Okay, well, I can answer that question relatively quickly. Climate change is real, and human behavior contributes to it. It just does, okay?
I think she was referring to turning the fans on in this room because it's like 120 degrees.
Climate change is happening right now, right here. And so climate change is real. Human activity contributes to it. And the way to solve this is twofold. One, we have to have an all-of-the-above energy plan that includes nuclear. Now, I want to make sure you guys understand this. In my home state, the most densely populated state in America, 53% of our electricity is nuclear. And we've operated it safely for 40 years. Okay, so you can do that. You can do it. And we should do it, and that doesn't add anything, any carbon to the system. We should not have electric vehicles required for everybody because, as Gavin Newsom said this summer, don't plug in your cars or you'll crash the grid. Well, when you don't plug in your electric car, you know what it is? A planter. That's what it is. Can't do anything with it. All right, so I can do one question. I'm supposed to be doing...
Like 2 minutes till CNN, sir.
Oh, I got to go to CNN? Okay, well, hell, man, I can't do one more question then. All right? Well,
Mary Pat's
37 years. You think you get a little deferral on it. She's like, I've been trying to tell you. You got to go on CNN. All right, so let me finish up with this. I would love to take more questions. I don't know why we scheduled CNN at 8 o'clock, but that'll be something for me to discuss with my staff. Okay? Because I'd much rather take your questions than Anderson Cooper's. But nonetheless, I promise to be on there. Let me end quickly with 1 minute of this. First of all, I want to thank the governor for being here tonight. Very, very much. Thank you. In response to your question, let me tell you, in New Hampshire, you've never, ever, ever had to wonder where Chris Sununu stood on Donald Trump's lies. I am proud to stand right next to him on it. You all can change this and make it happen.